Hi again, Panther fans, and welcome to the Panther Insider Podcast, driven by Ford. This is Dave Cohen, the radio voice of the Panthers. On this latest show, we go inside Georgia State basketball again with head coach Jonas Hayes. This week, we're recapping Georgia State's recent two-game homestand with Coastal Carolina and Texas State. Georgia State came away with a split, 72-71, a win over the Chanticleers, followed by a 68-59 loss to the Bobcats. And we'll talk to Coach Hayes about those two games, as well as games coming up this week, Wednesday and Friday at the GSU Convocation Center. James Madison and Marshall in Atlanta this week. The Panthers have won 4 of their last 6. They're now 13-15 overall, 7-9 in conference play. And interestingly enough, say this always at this time of the year, it seems like the season flew by. This week, it's the final 2 home games of the regular season, and basketball tickets for these last 2 regular season home games available by calling the Georgia State Athletics ticket office 404-413-4020 or purchase tickets online at georgiastatesports.com. As always, if you've missed any of our previous podcasts, they're all available on our Apple Archives page. You can access that online at georgiastatesports.com. Once again, we're talking Georgia State basketball on the latest Panther Insider Podcast. So right now, let's welcome head coach Jonas Hayes to the Panther radio microphones. And Coach, good to see you again. Great to be with you. A win against Coastal Carolina, which we'll dive into. A loss in the most recent game at home against Texas State, which you were not super happy about. Right now, 2 games under 500 overall, and as well as Sun Belt Conference play. And here we are, the final week of the regular season.
Yeah, you're right. Thanks for having me, Dave. This season has flown by. I think our team overall has shown a great deal of growth. I do still think there's a tad bit of inconsistency there, but I think overall our guys have shown a good deal of growth, and we're just trying to keep moving that thing forward.
Well, for Georgia State, you would come in knowing that you're going to play the final 4 games at home, which was definitely a positive, because it seemed like we were kidding around last week. For every 1 home game, it felt like we were playing 4 games on the road. Great to be back at the Convocation Center. You win one, and we kind of let one get away.
Yeah, coming back home, we feel good about how we play at home. But yeah, we're a little disappointed that we ended up with a split. I think Texas State really did a great job of bringing some energy and some effort, and you know what? And it was one of those games where you were disappointed because it's an opportunity that you let slip through your fingers at home in league play, and that's just a little bit of consistency our guys are going to have to develop to be the program that we're going to be.
All right, let's look back at the first game this past week, Coastal Carolina. Georgia State wins it 72-71, up 7 at halftime, 37-30. An 8-0 run, as a matter of fact, to end that first half, down 1 to up 7, which was a positive heading into the locker room. And this was a game, if I remember a week ago when we sat here on the Panther Insider Podcast, revenge, probably not the right word, but the disappointing overtime loss in Conway certainly was floating around in the back of everybody's mind as you got ready for this game, knowing you got them in Atlanta.
Yeah, certainly that was a part of our thought process, but it wouldn't necessarily not, like you said a minute ago, not necessarily revenge. But I tell you what, Coastal Carolina is a tough matchup for us, just with the way their roster is set up and how ours is constituted, and for us to get out of there with a win, I thought that was very telling for us in a very good way, because their team is much better than their record indicates, and so I was excited about that. Even though that it wasn't a perfect game, our effort and energy kind of was going up and down, and our consistency and attention to detail wasn't there for the full 40 minutes, and I felt like a little bit we escaped that game. And but always you always want to. I would much rather win pretty than win ugly and lose pretty.
I think it goes to show as well the Sun Belt Conference from top to bottom. Certainly we've seen Appalachian State and James Madison, but you go back to the last 3 games, they were teams in the lower 7. Great win on the road at Old Dominion, but we saw how tough they played at home. It took a Julian Mackey 3 to put us ahead. Then we come home, Coastal Carolina, again a second 7 team. Get me that last second shot, Tenari Lane. And then Texas State comes in on a 3-game losing skid. But it just goes to show you from top to bottom, what you face night in and night out.
Yeah, parity is the name of the game in the Sun Belt, and you have 2 elite teams. I think 3 elite teams, a handful of teams actually. To be honest with you, at the very very top. But once you get behind that, we're all the same in terms of jockeying for position. These games is 1-2 possessions either way. You look at the game at Texas, with Texas State, and we dropped that one, but the prior 2 games could have went the opposite direction, and so it kind of shakes itself out. It's like a murderer's row, and we all trying to beat ourselves up, trying to jockeying for position, and it's interesting. It's interesting, but it's also frustrating all at the same time.
All right, so the game comes down to, and it was a great finish. Anybody that bought a ticket to Georgia State Coastal Carolina got their money's worth with regards to watching a really good basketball game, because down the end, the Jacob Meyer kid goes down, hits a shot. They go ahead 2, and then we come back down, and Dewan Odom, coast to coast, basically in the paint under the basket, out of the corner of his eye, I'm guessing, shovel pass to Tanari Lane, and Tanari does what Tanari does when he's hitting, knock that baseline jumper down for 3, and you get out of there with a 1-point win.
Yeah, I tell you what, Jacob Meyer he's a whale of a ball player. To be a freshman, and he gave us everything. He gave us our field, to be honest with you. He hit a tough shot under 10 seconds to go. We didn't have any timeout, so we called a play the last dead ball to kind of get the ball down the court quickly and people fill their spots. And DeJuan did a phenomenal job of reading the defense, getting to the paint through the drift pass over to Tanari. And he shoots that shot every single day. And so when it went off his hand, I was saying this got a great chance to go in, and it did. We were all excited about that. And that was kind of like we were due for one of those type of shots, I felt. And we was able to come out on the winning end.
Actually, Panthers have gotten 2 of them in the last 3 games. You got the Mackey 3 at Old Dominion, which was huge, and then you get this one from Tanari. I know I've said this to you a million times about Dewan Odom being able to fill up a stat sheet. That was obviously the biggest assist of the game. His final line score, and by the way, Tanari ended up leading Georgia State with 16. Lucas had 15. Dewan, 14 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals.
Yeah, he's a jack of all trades, and when he's playing at that level, he's tough to guard. We are tough to beat, and so I'm excited that he had some success that night.
Okay, but I kind of left this out of his line score. $64,000 question. What guy on your roster who's not really a three-point shooter hits the three-point shot to tie the game at 69?
Yeah, I mean, listen, when that shot went up, and I think it was a step back at that on the left wing. I'm like, oh, what in the world? Great shot, baby, great shot. And so that's one of the things. And then the one when he has time and space, he can knock down those shots. And he had it going, he had it rolling, and we needed a bucket, not necessarily a 3 at that point, but I'm glad it went in, and we was able to rally down the stretch and execute defensively and really come out of there.
And I just wanted to clarify, not so much with you, but any Panther fans listening, if they watched us on ESPN Plus or were listening on the radio, I think I made mention that Dewan is not much of a three-point shooter. Well, part of it is because he doesn't really need to fill that role. You've got Lucas Taylor. You've got Tanari Lane. You've got Julian Mackey. I'll throw in Malik Ferguson because, Malik, when you've given him some minutes, has knocked down threes like he did at James Madison. My point is, in the entire array of the Dewan Odom menu of options, the 3 is not really that necessary because, you've got other guys that kind of fill that need.
And to Dewan's credit, he recognizes that too, and so that's the reason he doesn't shoot many of them. There are time and opportunity for him to throw one up there, but he recognizes that we've now shooting percentage is not through the roof, and our shot selection needs to get better. But we do have guys around him now that are situated to make shots, and he recognizes that. That's the to his credit, he recognizes that.
And I would take it one step further without going back and watching each 3 from the other guys that I mentioned, Lane and Taylor and Mackey. How many of those 3s are off an assist from Dewan Odom?
Yeah, a good deal of them. He's averaging 4.5 assists almost a game. And I'll tell you what, when he's situated mentally like he was then, Tell you he's a tough matchup, and we're tough to beat.
Okay, so you want the positive first, or you want me to touch on the negative?
Give me the positive.
All right. So you forced 17 Coastal Carolina turnovers. You converted those into, looks like right at 17 points. Great job taking care of the ball. My final stat sheet said Georgia State, number of turnovers, 4.
Yeah, and so that's who we are. We top 5 in the country and not turning the ball over. And so when we're committed to making the right decision, taking care of the ball. Now, our decision making is not always great, but when we're committed to taking care of the ball, man, our offense it really can hit another level. And that's what we were able to do. We were able to force them against Coastal Carolina, and also we had many possessions where we had a shot at the bucket, and that's a recipe for success. On the flip side.
On the other side, Coastal Carolina, 17 offensive rebounds, which I'm sure is when you're lying in that bed at night, those 17 offensive rebounds are playing through your mind, along with a few other things like Tenari's shot.
That has kept me awake so many nights, man. And to give a team, and that's why I feel very fortunate to come out of that Coastal Carolina game with a win, because they had so many extra possessions off of their offensive rebounds that we got lucky. Yeah, and of course our guys played hard, but playing hard is one thing. Playing smart is equally as important as your effort, and we that's something that's been a thorn in our side all year long, and we're going to keep going back to the lab and continue to work on getting better at that. And at the end of the day, that has been 1A of our issues majority of this year.
So I mentioned Lucas Taylor with 15 points following Tenari's 16, and Brendan Tucker, again, a spark off the bench with 12.
Yeah, he could be a microwave type guy. He's wired to want to put pressure on the rim, put pressure on the paint. And believe it or not, he's gotten some fouls here defensively, but he could be a catalyst on our defensive end too with his ball pressure. And so I was pleased he had some success.
Three-point shot, if I remember to a year ago, the three-point shot is not much. It's not as much a part of his game on the offensive end as it was a year ago.
Yeah, if we can get him playing downhill, playing on 2, getting to the paint, making quality decisions, that's kind of sort of who he is. Now, he's a capable shooter with time and space. He has not had a lot of success here lately shooting the 3, but with time and space, I think he's a decent three-point shooter.
Go back to the Coastal Carolina game, just touch on the play of your post players, and Karyuam and Namoko.
And both of those guys, they are putting forth an unbelievable effort. And obviously to be placed in the position where we don't have a lot of depth down there, but those guys, how hard they play, how physical they try to play. Of course, I've done it. I've been at that position. And it gets hard. It's kind of unsung. It's kind of like a garbage man. You don't really notice them until something goes awry. And I just wanted to keep encouraging those guys that the impact they've had on our team is massive.
All right, so you come out of the Coastal Carolina game, and now the Panthers have won 4 of their last 5, beginning to put a nice little run together. Even as close as the Coastal Carolina one was, it goes in the win column, and you stack the W's and you move on to the next one. Talk about the time in between Coastal Carolina and getting ready for Texas State.
Yeah, and all about our process. This is the second time I feel this year that we got to a point where we were at a corner where we can turn it, get over the hump. And our guys didn't handle that situation well. And, on the one hand, I'm excited that our program is reaching the point where we feel like, okay, now it's time for us to get over the hump, or now it's time for us to get around the corner. And we just didn't have the same level of intensity, urgency. I don't know whether or not we were at home. You would think you were feeling good at home, but it just was not the effort where we dodged a bullet with Coastal Carolina, was able to get a win. We weren't able to dodge the bullet with Texas State. They came out with just played a little bit more desperate than we did. And we weren't able to not only exceed their level of intensity, we didn't even reach their level of intensity. And so that's something we've taken a look at in practice and trying to get back to the point where just play our basketball, just play Georgia State basketball. That's plenty good enough. And we'll be able to live the result if we're able to play our style. And we just didn't do that.
All right, Coach Hayes, coming up after this timeout, we'll come back and we'll dive into the Texas State game, and then I'll try to get him to look ahead to James Madison and Marshall. And then, of course, looming right around the corner, Sun Belt Conference basketball tournament down in Pensacola, but that might be pushing it a little bit to try to get Coach to look that far down the line. Georgia State, Texas State, we'll talk about that one on the other side of this timeout. This is the Panther Insider Podcast driven by Ford, and we're back following these messages from Ford and Center Park Credit Union.
Wherever you go this fall, greatness starts in a Ford SUV. That's because Ford Escape, Explorer, and the spirited Bronco Sport SUVs have the power, cargo space, and smart tech you need for tailgating on game day, camping under the stars, fall festivals, romantic dinner dates, concerts, antiquing, pumpkin picking, weekend getaways, school plays. For great offers on these versatile SUVs, see your local Ford dealer today. Greatness starts here.
Center Park Credit Union, the official financial sponsor of GSU football, is proud to be a part of the Georgia State community and the Panther Athletics program. Center Park provides members convenient financial services. In addition to online banking, mobile banking, and 7 Metro Atlanta branches, Center Park members have access to 5,000 co-op shared branches and 75,000 surcharge-free ATMs nationwide. To find a location near you, visit online at centerpark.org/contact, and that's park with a C. Not a member? Join today at centerpark.org. At Center Park, we help our members flourish. We're back on the Panther Insider Podcast, driven by Ford, inside Georgia State basketball. Dave Cohen joined by head basketball coach Jonas Hayes. Now on to the Georgia State-Texas State game. The Panthers end up letting this one get away, 68-59. Texas State gets out of Atlanta with a win. Panthers trailed by 1 at halftime, 31-30. Your thoughts on this one?
Extreme disappointment. I mean, we play uncharacteristic basketball from a defensive offensive standpoint. I'm sorry, and defensively, to give up 68 points on 81 possessions, that's not bad. But our offense completely forsaken us with 17 turnovers. We hadn't had that many turnovers, or we hadn't had that poor of an offensive output since December. That's 2.5 months. And so for us to take that step back, was so uncharacteristic. So I don't want to lose all of my sanity over one game. It was an inopportune time for that to happen for the first time since December. But that's where it was. And majority of that game relies on our just discombobulation on the offensive end.
You mentioned the 17 turnovers. Texas State converted those into 13 points. The other number that jumped out on the stat sheet every time the guy would bring me a stat sheet, and it changed every time, but Texas State, 14 second chance points. They're again, hovering around the paint, the offensive boards, the Brandon Love kid in the second half.
That is not a recipe. Now, when you are discombobulated on the offensive end, and then you turn around and give second chance points, again, give the opponent extra shots at the rim, that's not a recipe for winning, for success.
DeJuan Odom, 16 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal. Again, as I said in the first segment, filling up a stat sheet. Tenari Lane, 13 points on 5 of 17 shots from the floor.
He didn't have the greatest of nights shooting the basketball. He's getting a lot more attention from opposing teams' defenses, and rightfully so. He's a really, really good shooter. And that adds to the discombobulation on our offensive end, in that the shots we took were very, very strained, and they were very, very guarded, and we just didn't work well together enough to get our team's best shot. And that's something that, again, that has not been who we've been, and that I'm looking at that as an anomaly. But we have an opportunity this week, coming up on Wednesday, to kind of get back to playing our style of basketball.
The one and only time we're going to see Texas State, unless we see them down in Pensacola, and we talked about this last week from a preparation standpoint. Again, it's not a team that you just played 2-3 weeks ago. They had come in on a 3-game losing skid, and, I look at them, doing that game courtside. I'm like, how's this team, third from the bottom. I mean, they did not look like, I'm not saying they look like Appalachian State and James Madison, but I'm like, they also didn't look like a team that was on a 3-game losing skid and hovering in the bottom of the league.
I felt it. Once they played with a lot more desperation. They played like, and I don't think we were fat and happy. But again, there's the question: how do you handle just a little bit of success? How do you handle that? And so we're not getting teams second-rate effort. We're getting teams top bill. And how are you handling that? And so that's the next step moving forward for these guys to understand and internalize. When you're in competition, people are coming right at your head. And if you don't really have it together mentally, you know what? You'll drop one.
You know, that's a term that you just used that a lot of people, I don't think, look at it that way. Desperation basketball. I'm putting that in those air quotes right here. Desperation basketball. And you're seeing that. I mean, we're seeing that down the stretch here. Not so much maybe against James Madison coming up on Wednesday, but these last 3-4 ball games every night. Desperation basketball. Teams that are below us in the standings.
You have got to play with a certain level of desperation where if your head was underwater, you're fighting for that next breath. That's the level of desperation you need.
Which is tough if you're in Georgia State's shoes because you're getting it every night.
Yeah, you're getting it every night. And how are we handling that? And so that's the next level of growth. And it's something that we've talked about the last few days, last couple of days since we played, how we handle that because we're getting people's first-rate effort.
Trying to remember the kid's name for Texas State, number 4. Really, really good player. I know you've got the stat sheet hanging around. But a really, really good player. When you talk about desperation basketball, that's kind of the kid that comes to mind for Texas State, and that's Davion Sykes. Sykes kind of was the stir, in my opinion, that the straw that was stirring the drink for Texas State in that game.
Yeah, he played with a level of physicality, getting downhill. He was a load for us. I think he ended up with 14 or 15 points that night. And he's physical. He's hard driving. And he kind of led their charge. He kind of led it.
And I thought Colton Benson, he did the damage. That's an outside guy. That's a guy you say you got to have someone. You got to have a hand in that kid's face no matter where he is on the floor.
He made a couple of huge shots. And again, those guys, they deserve to win. I said it in post-game media. I didn't think we deserved to win. And we played with fire much too long. We played with it in Coastal, and we tried to turn around and do it again, and we got bit. And that's just a growing up deal with our team that I kind of got frustrated with the other night. I probably let it loose a little too much, but that's the next step. And it's disappointing when you get to a point where you feel like you can turn a corner, and you take a step back. But I keep reminding myself, number one, that we're grateful to have the opportunity to do what we're doing. Number one, but number two, the line of progress is not linear. It's not a linear line, and so we have to take that. And it's just it's just what we're dealing with, and have to continue to grow.
All right, final 2 games of the regular season, thankfully at home. James Madison, currently in second place in the Sun Belt behind Appalachian State. We saw them a few weeks ago up in Harrisonburg. It was a little ugly, I'll let you say that. But the great thing about it is you got them here in Atlanta, and you can really. This is one of these potential statement games.
Yeah, it's another opportunity. Yeah, we've dissected and we've had an autopsy of that game up there in Harrisburg, and so you look at it, we got off to a horrendous start. And when you're playing against a team that is for a lot of part of this season was in the top 20 in the country, you cannot give that team your margin for error against anybody, Dave, is already small. But when you go up against an opponent that's as formidable as James Madison, your margin for error it decreases even more. And so but we've dissected that. I think our guys will be really, really good and amped up to have another shot at these guys.
So James Madison at the Convocation Center on Wednesday. I know we won't look too far ahead, but really other than Pensacola, there's nowhere else to look. You got Marshall coming in to close it out, and instead of playing on Saturday, it's a Friday game to give everybody an extra day before heading to the tournament.
Yep, and it's a quick turnaround, but it's no different between the Thursday, Saturday tilt. We just playing on Wednesday, Friday, and I think our guys, and I've not dug into them a little as much, as I will. And after our next game, our focus is 1,000% on the Dukes.
We talked about Leslie and Carrywell. This is totally away from that free throw, and I was really hoping he was going to make that free throw because he's at 999 points. I'm like, hit the free throw. Let's get you to 1,000. My point is he missed the free throw, so his next point, whether it's a free throw or hopefully a 2-point shot, he's going to be the next 1,000-point scorer. Now, granted, a lot of that was at his previous school, but he's going to hit 1,000 as a Georgia State player.
Yeah, that brings me great joy. He's one of the hardest workers we have. He's got a magnetic personality, unbelievable spirit about him. He deserves this success, and I want to send all these seniors out with a good flavor.
They call it senioritis. You probably went through it yourself when you were a college player. How do you manage that, especially with only 2 games to go and then the conference tournament?
You try to keep them focused on the goal at hand, and that's the next game. And we dominate their time. We don't want to dominate their time so much, but it is always a presence around. Okay, what's next? This is what we have to get accomplished next. And really, to be honest with you, you don't want to have them look 2 or 3 weeks ahead, because it really doesn't matter what 2 or 3 weeks ahead will bring. The next opponent you have to make a difference, the next opportunity you have to make a difference is going to be on Wednesday.
All right, Coach, as always, appreciate it, and best of luck this coming week. We got JMU and Marshall to close it out, and we'll talk again next week.
Thanks as always, Dave, and let's go Panthers, baby.
All right, want to thank Georgia State's head basketball coach Jonas Hayes joining us again on the podcast this week. Panther Insider Podcast driven by Ford Inside Georgia State Basketball. A reminder to Georgia State fans, basketball tickets for these final 2 regular season home games available by calling the GSU Athletics ticket office at 404-413-4020, or they can purchase tickets online at georgiastatesports.com. And again, I know Coach doesn't always look that far ahead. Just a reminder for Panther fans, if they're heading to Pensacola, the Sun Belt Conference Basketball Tournament gets underway March 5th. In Pensacola, Florida, at the Bay Center. We'll be there on the radio network. We're back talking Georgia State basketball with Coach Hayes again next week on the Panther Insider Podcast, driven by Ford. So Dave Cohen saying thanks for listening. We'll see you at the Convocation Center. And as always, go Panthers!